The anxiety was like static electricity crackling through the tunnel as halftime drew near. It was the end of one of the most intense quarters in the history of Indiana Fever, but there wasn't quite as much coordination. In the changing area, Caitlin Clark charged at the bench, her jaw clenched and her eyes like daggers. Coach Stephanie White followed closely behind, trying to provide directions above with her clipboard in hand. The clamor of the crowd, then it happened. Even though the words were not captured, the emotion was clear. By the cameras, Clark, obviously annoyed, turned around in mid-step and faced fairly directly. She shook her head, pointed to the court, and snapped something, causing even the assistant coaches to freeze. It was sincere rather than spectacular. This wasn't a diva's ostentatious breakdown, this was an elite competitor who called for transparency, independence, and leadership. If you would want to view the unedited version of the tale instead of the one that was filtered. If you intend to stay for the next meltdown. If you follow Clark's career, you can see right away that she doesn't sugarcoat anything. From the record-breaking WNBA attendance to the packed collegiate venues in Iowa, she plays with the fervor of someone. She is direct and loud, and she is trying to alter the rules in real time. This was not the same. However, right now. It was more important than a single subpar quarter or a missed rotation. It was about the future of the Fever and whether or not Caitlin Clark would be permitted to be herself inside this franchise. To tell the truth, Clark didn't sign with the WNBA to be a supporting cast member. She didn't make college basketball stand out for 4 years only to be told to slow down or ignored in order for someone else to trickle the clock down. Her style, which includes quick threes, no-look passes, and quick breaks that start with a bounce, but since coming to Indiana, she has remained cautious. On the one hand, traditional thinking, low-scoring slugfests, worn-out possessions, and built-in setups. To assist veterans with 10 years of league experience, Coach White is comfortable in this circumstance. She is not interested in the 35-foot logo shots or eye-catching transitions. Her role is to run plays through the veterans while upholding discipline and control. On the other hand, Clark's vision for the game includes uptempo, mayhem, pace, space offense, and creative flexibility. Game, rather than being reckless, she is revolutionary. At halftime, she was yelling loudly enough with her snap. It has been evolving for a few weeks. One could say, the plays when Kelsey Mitchell made mistakes, the delayed rotations, and dribbled into a disputed mid-range attempt while Clark was totally shut out. Clark was more irritated than his emotions. It was computed. As she reads the floor 3, the system is holding her back like sandbags on a rocket ship. Moves forward. By the start of the third quarter, everything had changed, with a whole different mindset. With anger in her eyes, Clark came out. She seemed to be switching a switch. 3 deep threes were made by her in changing from playmaker to assassin in less than 5 minutes. Coach White said nothing as the audience sat on the bench and went crazy. The team had clearly improved since Clark assumed leadership. Suddenly, the ball began to move. The colleagues were deliberately cutting and screening with greater force. Opening up, Natasha Howard, who had been stiff-arming the offense, finally started to move at Clark's speed. Instead of forcing shots, Kelsey Mitchell provided Clark a transition assist, possibly sensing the shift. After a 30-point quarter, the team looked more like a postseason contender than a mid-tier mess. The post-game news conference was a maze. Of course, Coach White responded in a conventional manner. "We made a modification," the team stated, refusing to acknowledge what had clearly occurred on national television. Without mentioning the altercation, it was a strong effort in the second half. She didn't sidestep it. "But, Clark, we're trying to build something here," she continued with a steady glance, "and occasionally that entails having tough discussions because we want to win. I want to win. I'm not here to be courteous. I'm here to take the initiative. And you know what? She's not wrong. If the Fever want to, they must hand her the keys and step aside. Prevail. She is not only their best scorer but also their finest passer, floor general, and communicator. And, in the end, their greatest chance to create a modern identity. The WNBA is evolving. The old methods are being replaced by speed, spacing, and star power. Clark is everything and more. However, that shift won't be easy. There are still veterans who feel they owe more money. Within the locker room, some coaches still believe that organization is the key to safety. Those are still present in the media, who think Clark's confidence is arrogance. But here's the deal: hesitancy is not the foundation of dynasties. They are based on courage, vision, and letting your best players mold the culture, and culture is at risk in this situation. There are more factors besides play calls and stat lines: whether the Indiana Fever are ready to become, whether they wish to be a club trapped in mediocrity or the squad that rides with Caitlin Clark into the future. A mix of seasoned egos and outdated strategies. The fans have made the choice. In the arena, they yell her name. The item is selling out quickly. ESPN cuts to her reactions each time the ball is in her hands. She is more than just a beginner, she is a revolution. Every revolution starts with a halftime moment. Explosion, when the star at last says out loud what everyone has been thinking. It's sufficient. I'll execute it. What happened at halftime was only a spark. However, a much larger issue is currently gaining traction. In Indiana, there is a smoldering problem and all throughout the league. To be clear, when Caitlin Clark yelled at her coach, she was speaking on behalf of every athlete who has ever been denied the opportunity to entire potential by an overly rigid structure, for each newbie who is supposed to obey commands instead of take the initiative, as well as for each star who is told to obey commands instead of taking the initiative. There's more going on here than merely a struggle for dominance. Tradition and change are engaged in a culture war that is just beginning in women's basketball. One coach from a generation that employed a one-size-fits-all playbook is Stephanie White. Dedication and practice to develop their techniques. To be fair, in the early 2000s, that tactic worked. It was effective when a league was fighting for visibility and consistency. Previously, reducing mistakes appeared to be the approach of gaining trust, but the 2025 WNBA is another matter. Supporters expect more than just efficacy. They want flair, they want stars, they want 30-foot daggers that instantly illuminate Twitter. As well as attitude and quickness, they want to feel emotion again. Additionally, Caitlin Clark continuously arouses the feeling. She's not a perfect athlete, she is not flawless. Even devoted fans maintain there. While she receives heat check injections, but you know what else she does? As soon as the ball enters, she presses against defenses with her hands, she sees passes before they get there, she enhances opponents' performance. Teammates as well as the entire league. This coaching disagreement is crucial because of this. Disrespect has nothing to do with it. It is related to alignment. Right now, Caitlin Clark is acting like a confined generational star. Develop a framework for role-playing. It is also seen in the body language and the rhythm of the game. The tempo slows and the offensive falters. In a corner, another property perishes, leaving Clark standing with his hands facing up. Moreover, contrary to popular belief, this is more than one game, this is a trend. The distance between a forward-thinking company and one that is too cautious to stay up is gradually widening. Now, let's talk about the locker room, because it's clear from the video transcript that not everyone is ready for the Clark age. Some players on this team, especially veterans, feel they ought to have the power to decide. For example, Kelsey Mitchell has been the face of the Fever for years. It's also clear how tense her play is, the inaccurate passes, the ISOs, and the incapacity to alter Clark's tempo. Instead than being personal, it's generational. Moreover, this issue is not exclusive to Indiana. This happens every time a young talent joins a squad with a lot of veterans. Pride, ego, and the dread of being outdone or substituted are all present. But here's the disturbing truth: the Fever needs to prioritize eyesight of solace if they want to win, and right now, Clark is the vision. It's essential to adapt. Passing when she calls is what that signifies. For the ball, instead of limiting her, this calls for coaching. It involves concentrating the system on her strengths as opposed to pressuring her to alter who she is to fit in with someone else's. A front office also needs to stop playing both sides. Right now, Indiana is caught in the middle. Make an effort to both satisfy its veterans and profit off the excitement Clark generates. But that isn't sustainable. You run the risk of witnessing if you don't invest in her generational gift. When her rookie contract expires, she will leave. Not to mention that Clark has options. She is already well known throughout the entire world. She may move out of Indiana and keep dominating headlines, merchandise, and sponsorships. If she stays, though, it must be because this team was built with her in mind rather than the other way around. Let's also talk about how the league as a whole was impacted by that brawl at halftime, the moment that video went viral. When it showed up on social media, different stories are presented in debate shows, podcasts, and TikTok edits. Clark is portrayed by some as an ungrateful newbie who disobeys authority. She was called a breath by some, like fresh air, because she finally wanted accountability and direction, but she did shift the needle again. Something that was beyond debate. Things start to become intriguing at this point, due to that kind of cultural weight involves both accountability and opportunity. Clark is doing more than just creating the character of her team. She is altering the conversation around women's basketball coaching, coverage, and consumption. She is demonstrating that WNBA stars are capable of having ambitions, disagreements, and ideas. Additionally, it's leadership rather than acting like a diva. Think about the way we cover NBA players. We don't flinch when Luka Doncic screams at Jason Kidd. We recognize that disagreement is an essential part of intense competition, but when Caitlin Clark does the same, it makes news. It's a scandal. It's disrespectful. Clark is facing the boisterous. A double standard, but there will definitely be resistance to that challenge, from coaches who see a problem. To their might. From commentators who expect rookies to be silent and grateful. From fans who wish for her to adhere to her own course, but in reality, she doesn't have a lane, she is building a road. Finally, the Fever are performing. The most ironic thing is that after that altercation, basketball was better, the offense is much more laid back. The speed has increased, without the ball, players are actually moving, and the team scores more goals efficiently. It's like a surprise, your team is better when you have faith in your generational point guard. This is what's going to occur next. If the Indiana Fever are serious, they need to have some tough conversations. About more than just tickets and clicks, about winning games. They have to decide if Stephanie White is the ideal coach for this. The future of the team. They have to decide if this core should include veterans who are resistant to change. They also need to provide Caitlin Clark both freedom and support, since no one succeeds in limbo. You can either empower your star or turn into the squad that had her and let her leave. Now let's discuss the ripple effect. Due to Caitlin Clark's